I am Sasha Cotton. I'll be your moderator for tonight. I am here with the African American Leadership Council, who is housed here. I'm the vice chair, and this is the forum for Ward 1 St. Paul City Council candidates. This is put together by the League of Women Voters here in St. Paul, Hallie Q Community Center, St. Paul Neighborhood Networks, and the African American Leadership Council and the NAACP. I'm just going to go over a brief statement. We believe the success of St. Paul depends on the values, knowledge, and commitment of our elected officials. Thus, it's essential for the public to better understand the views, opinions, and commitments of people running for elected office in St. Paul. It is this understanding that better equips voters with information to make informed voting decisions. We appreciate candidates and audience members taking their time to be here tonight. Before we begin, I'd like to let you all know that you have cards in your chairs, and please feel free to ask your questions via card. Once you've completed your question, just hold it up and a volunteer will come and get it from you and bring it up here so that we can include it in the questions section. At this time, I'm gonna ask someone from Ranked Choice Voting to come up and explain the process and just talk a little bit about that, and then we'll get into talking with the candidates. So thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mai Yi. I am a St. Paul community organizer from FairVote Minnesota. And FairVote Minnesota is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that focuses on reforming the electoral system, and we advocate for ranked choice voting. So raise your hand if you are familiar with ranked choice voting. Great. I guess it doesn't hurt to refresh your mind. So as you may know, this city council race is a ranked choice voting one. That means you get to rank all of these candidates in the order that you like them the best. If your first choice doesn't have enough votes to go on, your vote will transfer to your second choice. Your second and third choice never harms your first, and ranking the same candidate multiple times does not help them. So it always maximizes your voice and your power to rank your ballot. So today, listen for not only who your favorite candidate may be, but how you might like to rank them. So if you have any questions, I'll be at the back table. You can come and ask me more about ranked choice voting. I also have absentee voting forms if you are interested in voting by mail. So thank you so much.
Okay, so this evening's forum is for candidates running for Ward 1 and City Council, and we have with us Dai Tao, Lisa De La Torre, I want to make sure I get it right. I should read them this way. Abu Naim and Anika Bowie. So I apologize, they're not ordered this way as they are this way. The candidates participating in today's forum have all agreed to the forum rules, which were included in their invitation. Each candidate will be given a 2-minute introductory statement. They will have 1 minute to answer questions and 30 seconds for a rebuttal if they are named by someone else on the table in a comment. A timer will signal them with 15 seconds remaining when their time is ending, 30 seconds remaining. We will accept written questions throughout the forum. Questions submitted by the audience must not be personal in nature and must be on topics relevant for this position. All questions must address to all candidates, and once you have a question written, please pass it up or hold it up and an usher will collect it. Questions that are of a personal nature, embarrassing, hostile, or unclear in intent will not be asked, so please be careful of how you state your questions. Similar questions may be consolidated and questions may be edited for clarity or brevity, hence we have our lovely organizer here. Campaign literature, buttons, signs, clothing, or any other campaign-related to items are not allowed in this room, so please be mindful. But information on candidates is available at their tables outside of the forum. Please remain quiet as possible so that everyone can be heard, and please hold your applause until the forum has ended so that candidates will have as much time to speak as possible. Members of the media may be recording this forum for their own use, and the forum is being recorded by St. Paul Neighborhood Networks for viewing by the public, so smile pretty. And with that, we will get started with opening statements. So for this order, I will just start here, and then we will pivot to each new candidate for the next set of questions as for fairness. So we will get started with opening statements with Ms. Anika Bowie.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Anika Bowie, and I'm electrified to be running to represent the people of Ward 1 on the City Council. I am a lifelong resident, fifth generation Rondo resident here in St. Paul, and I love the city I come from and love the opportunity I have to be lifted up by many people in my community, to be a voice that's inclusive and connected and deeply rooted on the City Council. I am also a very proud St. Paulite and proud Central graduate at Hamlin University, and have used my experience to give back to the community that I'm seeking to serve, as well as using my optimism to lead us into a place that we can all have a seat at the table and we can have problems and solutions that we all can agree on. I'm also running to be the light for our dark moments, as we are going to have to address, our trash system. We're going to have to address really difficult times, like our violence, lack of affordable housing, and our very severe, extreme, dreadful winters. And I, been, here my entire life and have seen, the many obstacles that many of you have overcame, and I'm seeking to build coalition and build a partnership to where it's not just me who's on the city council, but it's really someone who's open to the communication and open to making sure that we're collaborating on these tough issues. I'm also running as the youngest vice president of the Minneapolis NAACP when President Derek Johnson, asked for young people to take charge and lead our 21st century movement. I took up that torch, and I'm taking up this torch to be the city council member to make sure that we are moving in a direction that really includes our voice. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Liz, please hold our applause. Next, we'll have Liz De La Torre.
Good evening. My name is Liz De La Torre. I'm a first-generation American. I'm the proud daughter of Mexican immigrants. I'm a renter. I'm a community organizer. And I'm a fierce advocate for victims of sexual violence. And I'm running to represent the diverse voices of Ward 1 at City Hall. I'm really passionate about advocating for those most vulnerable in our communities. It's what's brought me an incredible amount of humility, pride, and a deep understanding of what are the things we need to do to make real systemic change. And it's really the reason why I decided to run for city council. We need an unwavering advocate, an unwavering voice that will not bend under pressure or scrutiny. That's the type of leadership that will get us to the solution to our city's most pressing problems, from affordable housing that includes emergency shelter and transitional housing, to achieving true public safety, expanding that definition, ensuring that we're getting, accountability and transparency from our public safety department, and ensuring that you know where your city council member stands on all issues at all times. That is how we're going to really change how we interact with not just the city departments, but how we interact with you. I'm not running to be divisive. I'm not running because of the color of my skin or my ethnicity or my race. I'm running because I believe that there is a better vision for this ward, and I invite you all to join me and to engage in a conversation where we're going to find the solutions to our city's challenges. Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Mr. Abu Naeem.
Hello, everyone. So first, I'm a little bit dizzy right now, so I'm going to try my best to stay put. So my name is Abu Naeem. I'm a Bangladeshi American. My family came to America when I was 2 years old by the diversity visa lottery. I'm a Frogtown resident. I'm sure that gave it away. But I'm also, I have a master's of science in agricultural resource economics in UC Berkeley. I'm a former education data analyst for South Washington County Schools, and I'm also the founder and programmer of the St. Paul Data Initiative, which essentially takes public data and creates interactive reports and maps to inform the public, but most importantly, to take proactive action. And the reason why I'm running for city council is that I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated of our, I would say, our local leaders using poverty as an excuse to get people activated. So if you look at who is being involved in the listening sessions or reaching out to their council members, it's people that are wealthy, people who are own homes, property owners. And when you ask them, they keep using that as an excuse. And I'm frustrated with that because, you know, it's, when you grow up in poverty, it's all about survival. Like, you want to do the best for your family. And when I did door knocking for community safety within the Frogtown area, I was frustrated to hear many community members being ignored for many years. And they're just like, you know, why should I be engaged if no one's actually reaching out to me? So one key thing, I do want to share the statistic that, so right now, when you look at the voting data, the people who vote the most within Ward 1 are the age group of 60 to 70-year-olds. And in fact, if you look at the age group of 18 to 20-year-olds, around 1% vote in Ward 1 from 18 to 20-year-olds. This is systemic voter suppression. We're telling young people that local elections don't matter. And I think this is a responsibility as we are city council leaders to show why it matters. And if we look at crime, it impacts people's youth as well. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll have Mr. Daitao.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be here tonight. My name is Councilmember Dai Tao. I live in Frogtown. I'm the shortest council member, but I have the biggest heart. And thank you so much for allowing me to serve you in the work that we have done. I'm excited to have this conversation. We have created the most affordable housing. We've improved our economic development. We've brought in over $200 million worth of private investment. We leveraged over $40 million of money for our black-owned operated business. We improve our public safety, and we have invested in our community. And I'd like to continue to do that work. And I'm seeking your re-election. I'm seeking re-election. I'm hoping that you can support me, because I was raised in a culture that said, in order for my family to do well, I have to fight for you and your family first, because we are one community, one village. Even though we come from different parts of the world, our ancestor, I'm proud to be an American. I'm proud to have you as my American neighbors. And in order for us to get there, this is not the time for us to divide and pit Asian against black, Latino against white, Somali against Native American. More than ever, this is a time for us to unite, to stand with each other, to fight for each other's hope, to fight for each other's dream, to unite across race, across culture, across gender, across generation. We should be the leader in St. Paul in Ward 1, so the rest of the city could look upon us and say, that's how you do it. You come together as one. We are one, and that our diversity is our strength. And if we work together, we can bring in the opportunity and the resource that we so deserve in this community. And that's the kind of leadership we need right now. And that's why I'm seeking for a re-election. And tonight, I'm asking for your first choice on November 5th. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Well, we've heard great, wonderful openings from each of our candidates, and so now we will move into the question portion. Our first question will go to Ms. Liz De La Torre, and that question, will start with her and go this way and come back, finishing with Ms. Anika Bowie, is what would you do to promote affordable housing in Ward 1?
How much time do we have?
Each candidate will have 60 seconds to respond to the question.
Great. So one of the things about affordable housing is that how are we defining it? And most folks are defining it by area median income. You know, how are we providing some of those services and subsidies? And fact of the matter is that that is really different across our city. We see that our communities of color are the most impacted, have the lower AMIs, and are putting more and more of their income towards housing. I am a firm believer in, just with my background, I work with sexual assault victims every day, and a significant amount of them are homeless. They're experiencing generational homelessness. They've been experiencing it for a while, and it's why I'm really adamant about emergency shelter and transitional housing. We need to build a pathway so that those most vulnerable in our communities are actually able to get to where they need to go to move into those apartments that we're building all across our city, make sure that they have the supports, the services that they're entitled to and they deserve. It also means that our city has to step up and do more to provide more resources. Thank you.
Hello. So to increase affordable housing, I think first we have to understand we have to increase supply. So how do we increase the number of units available? So there's some creative solutions like a ADU. For example, in the alley, you can create like a little residential unit for that. So this can help for elderly folks. This is normally called a granny flat. In addition, we can also figure out how to increase the housing fund. So for example, when we think of affordable housing, we have to pay for it somehow. So normally that comes from taxes, but if we can work with the county and private industry and banks and nonprofits, they can put in some of that funding there so it doesn't push out taxpayers, so less burden on them. And last, I would say most very important is also resources. So there's a lot of abandoned lots. So in Ward 1, there is many properties that are still, I would say, they're vacant. So many of these landlords are actually waiting for a good time to take advantage of gentrification. So this is where we really need to understand who the landlords are and prevent them from taking advantage when opportunity comes in. Thank you.
Thank you. Affordable housing is important to me. I came here as a political refugee, live in the public housing, and a mouse and mice infested home. It was dehumanizing. So every day I go to work, affordable housing is one of my priority. We have a track record. We don't just have talking points. We have a track record of creating the most affordable housing and preserving the most affordable housing in Ward 1. If you drive, you go a couple blocks to Selby and Victoria. We're working on those two projects to create affordable housing for seniors, to keep folks in this community. But we need to do more. We need to implement rent control for folks who have fixed income. We have to implement our tenant protection program. Those are the things I'm currently working on, and I'm also working on this new policy, and I'm excited to announce, to share with you that we're in the work of, if somebody come in here and use city subsidy, then we have to put a path for tenants. How do they become homeowner, right? That's how we build wealth in this city. So if you're living in a unit in a big complex, after 5-10 years, how do we convert that into a contract for deed so they can own that unit?
So one of the reasons why I decided to run is because I wanted people who same age range as me, or even those who, my seniors, my elders, to be able to live in the place that they grew up, live in a place that they call home. One of the experiences that I had graduating from Hamlin University is coming back home and trying to find a nest here, and realizing that we had an issue of affordable housing. And part of the question is identifying who actually has access to affordable housing as part of that conversation that I'm willing to bring to City Council, and also using my experience and my relationships on the state and federal level to make sure we can leverage more dollars to invest into affordable housing, and also make sure that those units are going to those who are most underserved. That is the area medium income of 50 to 30%, to where those who are living actually below poverty line, to where I found out in Ward 1, our area medium income is $100,000. So that gives room to a lot of people who I am seeking to serve, to make sure they have affordable housing. Thank you.
All right, this next question, we will start with Mr. Abu Naim, and the question is, what is your plan to address the increase in violence in St. Paul in Ward 1? Should we have more police on the street? And what alternatives to policing would you support?
So I'm going to answer it first. I think we should at least we should not decrease the amount of police force, because if you listen to Chief Todd Axel, he mentioned that right now they're paying around $1.5 million in overpay for police officers. So this shows that they are overstretched. And one key thing I would focus on short-term community solutions. And when I'm referring to short-term community solutions, I mean neighbors building relationships and forming block clubs, so that way they understand who both protect their neighborhood, but also they understand who are committing those actions as well. So it's very important. So when I actually did visit in Mount Airy and other places or disenfranchised communities, they say they need protection. They are afraid to let their kids play outside, and that is not okay. So if we're not dealing a community solution that's right now, then we're creating isolated communities, and they're frustrated and they want more police there. So like if we want to decrease the number of police force, then we need to reach out to these people. Thank you.
We can't arrest a way out of poverty. We can't arrest a way out of structural racism that has oppressed members of our community. When you hear people, when young people pick up a weapon to hurt another person, that's just a symptom of what's going on in our community. We have to attack the issue at the root, and that's making sure that young people have good paying job, family has stable housing that we talked about earlier. Right now, our office is working with Community Action, Ramsey County, the God Squad, the Ambassador Program that's housing at Hallie Q Brown, the Right Track Program to bring opportunity into this community. And so, and at the same time, we just can't cut resource to our police officer too. It has to be a balanced approach, and because we have folks in our community that need help. They just need a chance to turn their life around. We can do that, but we have to do it as a community, and it starts with clear, practical leadership in City Hall that's going to invest in this community, that's going to leverage resource in this community. If you look at our the Frogtown Community Center, okay, we'll go into more detail about that as well. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So this is actually a real lived experience for me as someone who's a survivor of violence and a survivor of trauma. So addressing the issue of violence isn't political. It's very personal to me, and I see this as a very passionate priority for the city council to take real lead on. We need to increase in what works. And what works is making sure that we are giving people in St. Paul mentorships, relationships, and the actual pathway to a community health and wellness. We know that this violence have really been the burden and the grief, and that we need someone to lead on inserting grief counseling and giving access to real relationships building and supporting our nonprofits and our organizations and our faith-based organization who's really been doing this work and boots on the ground, to where, you know, the best that we can do is just create an environment that's healthy and conducive to not produce violence. And so we can promote wellness. Thank you.
I really like this question because it's one that forces us to think about how we're going to tackle violence, because there's not one single thing that's going to solve that. I don't believe that increasing the number of patrol officers or sworn personnel is going to get us the result that we're looking for. I do believe that we need more officers, sworn peace officers, doing the work, traditional roles. And what we see right now at St. Paul PD is we have a lot of officers that are that are doing a lot more administrative tasks. The gun violence right now that we're experiencing in our city, that does require an increased response, but we're not looking at how we're using those resources. We need to reform our standard operating procedures. And what that means is looking at how police do their work, looking at how many officers are responding to particular calls, looking at how long it takes to get an officer to arrive at your door when you call 911. And so I think that's a very nuanced conversation. It's one that I'm really eager to have. Thank you.
So this question will start with Mr. Daitao, and the question is, what can we learn from the trash controversy moving forward with future endeavors, such as alley plowing or compost pickups?
Thank you. You know, so I apologize as a council member that I was not able to help you get the best organized trash program, right? And so, but I don't apologize for the intention that we try to create a system that works for all of us. But what I said to Kathy Lantry in those conversations is that, Kathy, we should not implement this trash program across the city. My history working in IT is that we implement in one area, like one ward, one neighborhood, we work out all the glitches before we roll it out. And she said that was too hard to do. They didn't listen to that, and now we're in this big mess. And so I'm committed to going back and right now we're having a conversation with the hauler. We're trying to renegotiate the price to bring it down. And then when we renegotiate the contract, I want share card. I want people to customize it to their needs. We got to bring down the price. And because in the next 5 years, we're going to have compost, and so that's going to reduce our price significantly, and I look forward to doing that work for you. Thank you.
So as I've been door knocking and talking to many neighbors on the doors, trash has really been a very top topic for many folks, and a lot of people are frustrated with our current trash system because of just not being aware of it, not being educated or informed on it, as well as being on fixed incomes and our city council not creating a plan or being considerate of those who really may not be able to afford our trash system. I do believe, going into the 21st century, we do want to have a modernized way of hauling our trash. We do want to be a city that's environmentally friendly. We do want to be proactive with giving excellent customer service and city services to our community. And I'm here to stand to say we know it's easy to apologize, but it's hard to actually do the work to actually fix the problem in the first place. And I'm someone who's used to going and traveling uphill battles, and I'm willing to make sure we can work out this problem with City Council.
Ooh, so what can we learn from the trash controversy? Well, I think we learned that it's really hard to bargain with 14 people on one side of the table and the city being one person, right, theoretically. The conversations that I've had with folks around garbage, it seemed like there was more there, right? They were really irked about not just the amount of services, but what they perceived to be just a bigger symptom at City Hall, that lack of transparency, the lack of simple review. If you think about how many people had to have touched that contract or have a say in it or, do something or another in it, and to get the outcome that we still have, I think that's what's really, that just doesn't sit well with some folks. And so there certainly, the taxpayers are going to pay for it one way or the other, and that we know that much now. But we really just need to remember that we can make this better, and we just need more folks who are willing to do their research before they vote on things.
All right. So I think what we can learn from this controversy is that the city needs to tell the truth. They've been lying to us. For example, they're not treating residents with respect. So there was around 6,400 signers that signed a petition, and the city ignored a legal petition that it became a lawsuit. And if the city was serious about affordable housing, not affordable housing, allowing sharing bins and opt-out, then they would have taken advantage when Judge Castro did his first ruling to allow the referendum in place, so they could have done at that point of time to actually renegotiate the contract, but they did not do that. They actually went to the Minnesota Supreme Court. So this is all a bunch of baloney, and people know this, and this is why they're frustrated, and this is why they're so passionate. So what we can learn about this is actual leadership, actual being transparent, actually being honest. And I wrote a letter to Mayor Carter saying, I want organized trash, but I want organized trash that makes sense. So let's take the opportunity to renegotiate rather than go through this referendum process.
Mr. Tao has asked for an opportunity to rebut a statement based on implications of him being a city council member. So he will have 30 seconds to offer a rebuttal.
I think it's fair for us to know the context of the organized trash, right? We have a year-round discussion about the values that we want, what a organized trash would look like. And some of those values was we wanted to have bulk service, we want to protect the small hauler, we want to have a clean environment and reduce omission. And so because of those 14 hauler coming together, the price index was high because those small hauler, we're trying to protect them so that they can keep their business running. But what happened was that they sold out. And so they got us into this contract. We're trying to help them.
That's 30 seconds. Thank you, sir. At this time, we'll move to the next question, which will start with Ms. Bowie. Would you commit to opposing any attempts to repeal ranked choice voting in St. Paul?
I am a strong supporter of ranked choice voting. I think it's a very inclusive and very broad and expansive way for people to be involved in the election, and also especially as a first-time candidate who's running and the youngest candidate who's running. This gives opportunities for more people to really share their vision and share their boldness and also their initiative and incentive on why we need to have new leadership. So I think it's inviting, and I promote it, I support it, and yeah, absolutely.
So we got ranked choice voting through a ballot initiative, which is how it ended up in the charter and how we have it now. I was initially not fond of it, but in local elections where they are nonpartisan seats, I think, it's a system that we have, and it's, I think we should try to accommodate it to the best of our ability. The one thing that I'm still kind of waiting on is for Ramsey County elections to really, get up to pace with it. They haven't updated their voting machines yet, so that's why we end up having to count our ballots once we go to instant runoff. But I think it's a system we have, and it really changes the conversations that we have to have at the doors. If I'm not your first choice, maybe I can be your second choice or your third choice, and I think that's that can be a really powerful message, and it really empowers voters to look at all the candidates and not just go with one.
I agree with ranked choice voting. I think the most important aspect is that you can support multiple candidates, so it's not just you're my team versus that team. So that creates I would say, division by creating that sort of space. But also I want to add that ranked choice voting should actually expand at the state level, because it gives an opportunity for third-party candidates and actually a nonpartisan candidate, because you can actually create a framework. So I know there's gonna be like mathematics involved, but like you can do a framework where you actually don't lose anything of choosing the nonpartisan candidate, that it would be formed back into like a normal form of voting, but it'll, you can support the nonpartisan candidate, and the nonpartisan candidate can actually win. So if you really want to transform our, I would say, elections at both the state level, so right now our city council election is nonpartisan, but that should be the same way for the state level as well, for all the other offices as well. But of course, we have a party system, but the best way to do that is to allow ranked choice voting to at least give that possibility to exist. Thank you.
So I support ranked choice voting, and I'm asking for your first choice vote. If I don't have your first choice, I'd love to have your second or third. And I like it because there's less personal attack and more focusing on the issue, because we're all trying to do the same thing. I think all my opponents are trying to do the good thing for our ward. But I think we need to do more. I think we need to move our election to the even year, so that we stop wasting your tax dollar, because we're doing this on an odd year, next year we're going to do another one. So I think it's just a lot of wasting, and we waste a lot of resource, and then we continue to raise our property taxes to meet these needs, and to me that's not efficient, and that just doesn't make sense. So I like the city and the Ramsey County to move all of our election to even year.
We will start this round with Ms. De La Torre. The question is, what is your position on Aid Mill Road repaving project and the mayor's proposal to restructure it?
Yes, I fully support the mayor's initiative to make Aid Mill Road a complete street. It is a city road, a city street, so we get to really have a lot of say in how that is done. But we can't continue to not have a long-term plan for 8 Mill Road. It is, we're just throwing money at it. And we're providing an easy way for folks to leave St. Paul, to come in from Egan. And I don't think it's really serving the needs of those folks right here in St. Paul. I think that we're coming up on a construction that's going to reduce it already to, I believe, 1 lane in each way. So I think that's going to be a really good kind of test to see how that's going to go. But we really should be sharing the roads. It's a way to be environmentally sustainable. It's a way to really cut down on that speed, so that we're not running that road down into the ground and just throwing money at it, because it is on a creek bed, and that foundation is not going to get any better. So why not go with the long-term plan that Mayor Carter's proposed for it?
So building on Liz's, so I agree with Liz's points, and I just want to also expand on that. It's a monetary decision. So for example, since the city owns that road, so all those heavy trucks are passing through that road, the city has to pay for that. And if it goes through the highway or the stateway, then they pay for that. So this is a financial reason to support this. And also, in addition, right now for infrastructure, for street maintenance, we're actually below the recommended amount. So right now we're spending around $20 million, where we should be spending $50 million to have the street quality that's adequate according to the Public Works Department. So I think this is why we should allow this to occur. But also to understand, I want to explain induced demand as well. So this road is being used mostly during rush hour. So this is where people from the suburbs are going in through the city. So induced demand is essentially saying that people will take the least resistance to go around. But anyway, you can look that up on Wikipedia if you're interested.
So I don't support the changes to AML Road because one, there's no community engagement. When I asked Kathy Lantry, Public Works Director, what's going to happen when the issues spill into the neighborhood, they had no mitigation plan. They're not going to put money into helping us solve those issues. It's not equitable when you drive those traffic into neighborhoods like on Lexington, on Dell, where there's a lot of senior, there's a lot of people of color in this community. That doesn't make sense for us. And so if we're gonna make AML Road, and I support the bike plan in the city of St. Paul, but we gotta be comprehensive and strategic in how we do this so that we don't create other issues for other members of the community, like the organized trash. Right? Like that type of arrogance is what got us to this mess. So I can't support that. We gotta have engagement. This is a democracy, you know? And if we were in China, it might be different, but here, everybody needs to be at the table. And even if we disagree with it, we can still have dialogue, because that's what makes St. Paul great.
Thank you for this question. This is actually the first time I had this question on the forum. So talking on the doors, that this is actually a position that many neighbors are in support of. I believe that we should, change the scope of what community engagement means. Where community engagement is on conversations on the doors, community engagement is conversations over coffee, or talking with your neighbors and picking up the phone. And what I have been hearing is that people are willing and wanting to share the roads. They want to have inclusive transit. They want to be able to walk. They want to be able to bike. They want to be able to be in the most livable city that actually has the most livable transit. And for those who do not agree, I understand that this is not a polarized conversation, but I think this is also a conversation of like, how do we want to see the future and how we're walking into the future? And how do we want to make sure that this city is a place that people can live and they can work? And I think, St. Paul should find ways to be more connected transit-wise, road-wise with Minneapolis. And I'm here to lead this vision and also lead this collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll start with our next question with Mr. Naeem. And the question is, what are you going to do for senior citizens that are on fixed incomes? Many can barely afford taxes now without raising them another 17 to 20%.
All right, so as you sort of mentioned in the question about the taxes, property taxes increasing, so this is where we need to be smart of why it's increasing and how we can actually decrease the taxes. And this is where the ironic sort of comes in, not ironic, the kind of paradox that comes in with social services, that the more services we provide, the more difficult it is to pay for them. And one key part of reducing costs can be doing an audit about where are we spending the money. So for example, I look at the average salary of the mayor's cabinet, and has been increasing. So from 2014 to 2019, it was from $100,000 the average salary in a complete package. Now it's like $139,000. So within a 6-year period has increased that much. And if you look at the salary, individual salary, some folks are making like $130,000 or above that. So, and about for the elderly, I think what's very important to understand that they have lived in the community for a long time. A lot of times where I would say safety is one of those big issues. So when you actually talk to neighbors, they're like, they're afraid to live in their community if we don't address safety, and they feel they have to be kicked. Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Mr. Tao?
Some of the statistic that just came out was that the people of color minority has become the majority in St. Paul. This is going to be a big problem when you have the concentration of wealth in the white community, but everybody else is struggling, and our seniors and people of color are struggling. That's going to hurt us in the future. What I propose is a bold vision that the city work with our partners to create jobs for young people, for our seniors and folks who are fixed income to improve our workforce development. See, the jobs that we help create for the community, that money that we pay them, they're not going to go and spend it in Bloomington or some other part. They're going to spend it back in our community, the local small business. And so that's how we create a balanced economic ecosystem where everybody is involved, where everybody get their fair share, where everybody pay into the system so that we can sustain our city. And so I'm excited to do that work. I'm excited to learn about other models in across the country and in other parts of the world that it's working for their community, and I'd like to see that happen in the city of St. Paul.
Please repeat the question.
What are you going to do for senior citizens that are on fixed incomes? Many can barely afford taxes now without raising them another 17 to 20%.
Yeah, I think our approach to, our issues of really supporting our seniors and how we can best make sure that they can actually age in place and that they can be able to afford their lives in their golden years is, more so of the relationship of how can we really build and collaborate and really bring this issue to the state level and the federal level, and also collaborating with our commissioner to make sure that some of these social services can be provided to our seniors so they don't have to choose between paying taxes and food or paying taxes or going on vacation. I think also too, we should make use of our financial empowerment department to really be inclusive of our seniors, to make sure that we have a values document, that our budget is making sure that it's aligned with people to afford their taxes. This is an issue that's hitting all of us, and this is an issue that I'm continuing to have and make sure we're going to keep this conversation going. Thank you.
Thanks for asking that question. Being on a fixed income is really tough, especially when you've put in your time, you worked, you're supposed to be, riding off into the sunset, and the reality hits when you get that property tax bill in the mail. And one thing has become really apparent to me is that we can't continue to fund our city services on the backs of property tax owners, property tax payers, I should say. We've got to be more judicious and more creative at the city about how we're going to generate revenue. And I think that means making some tough decisions, and I think that means having a bold vision. I do think that, are we looking at maybe, a sales tax increase to help fund some of the services so we're not always going back to folks about property taxes. We need to generate more revenue. There was a pilot program not that long ago to put meters up and down Grand Avenue that would have generated for the city a minimum of $800,000 per year. So let's get some of this done. Let's get you, the information you need and have those conversations to do what we need to do.
Thank you. So our next question will start with Mr. Daitao. And the question is, how would you address safety needs, giving particular consideration to the light rail and our youth?
Can you repeat the first part?
Yes. How would you address the safety needs of St. Paul and Ward 1, giving specific attention to the light rail and young people, not necessarily connected?
Thank you. Like I said earlier, when violence and crime starts because of poverty, trauma, structural racism, issues in our community that's deep-rooted since the beginning of our country, right? And so in order for us to address violence, we need to invest in our community, invest in young people, making sure that they have housing, opportunity. If you go to Highland, there's not a lot of crime over there, because they're privileged. They're at a different place in our society. So we have to provide the same kind of resource and equitable opportunity in Ward 1. Now, that's the work that we've been trying to do. We also need to leverage technology. I support a shot spotter technology that will come and will help reduce crime, that will take the weapons off the street, and putting folks and the members of the community and organization to be in the neighborhood along the corridor to invest in young people and turn their lives around. And we all have to do this together. It's not a Daitao thing. Everybody in this city has to work together to make this happen. All of those kids are our kids too. And so we have to work together, and I know we can't turn their lives around.
Yeah, when I decided to run, I really decided to run because I saw that there wasn't really a voice to really speak to the young people, and to really address like really the lives of young people and the challenges that they face, and that it's very easy to throw money at a problem to regulate them or control them or remove them off the streets or off of our light rail. But I am running to do something much deeper, do something that's more inclusive and actually more humane on how we treat our young people and how we show them opportunities that they are welcomed here. I am that young person who have utilized our light rails and also have advocated when Mayor Carter was the city council member for Ward 1 for an extra stop on Victoria, so those who are in those areas, the historic Rondo areas, and have experienced displacement will not experience displacement no more, and that we can all use our transit system, and that our issue that at hand with the young people in our transit is not an issue that we should throw dollars at, but an issue we should have more conversation on.
I mean, again, this is a holistic conversation that we need to have when we're talking about youth. I'm really glad to see the city putting more money into our rec centers, expanding those hours along with libraries. But there are some things that we can do. We can make sure that people are paid a livable wage in our city. We can make sure that there are no tip credits. We can make sure that, young people deserve that opportunity as much as possible. In my senior year of high school, I was in a domestic violence shelter, and one of the only ways I was able to provide for my own family was to get a job at Target. And when you look at some of those numbers about the phasing in, how long it's going to take to phase that in, and the fact that there are a lot of young people that are supporting their families on those minimum wages, and I don't think we should be carving out lower wages for them. Additionally, ShotSpotter, it's a waste of money. We don't have enough officers to respond to that scene, and we don't have, even Chief Axtell has said that there's no point in implementing that technology without having the investigative resources to back that up.
So this is a very complex question, obviously. So I would say, not to say, I don't use the word simply, but young people need mentors. One of the big challenges, I grew up in poverty. I grew up where I got desensitized to violence. So I used to carry a weapon on me to high school just because that's just the norm. And if you didn't do that, then you're asking for it. So one of the key aspects is to really, for young people to have I don't want to use a mentor. A mentor helps guide on what matters, what values, but really importantly, if you look at trauma, one key aspect is that kids want to have belonging. So when they're 13, 14 years old, when they have this sense of identity, they ask, do I belong in the community? Does the community care about me? And if the answer is no, then they'll look at their peers, and their peers become their sense of belonging, and that's how gangs sort of form. And this is commonplace and elsewhere. So this is not something that's completely new. And in fact, this is where, if you look at where there's gang violence that's rampant, is that there is no mentors in those spaces where the kids have to take care of themselves, and this is where it sort of festers this behavior.
Thank you. So our next question, we will start with Ms. Anika Bowie, and the question is, how can higher density have a positive impact on St. Paul?
So I am actually in support of higher density. I think it's not what it is, but how we use it. Higher density actually will help us make more affordable housing. It will help us expand the population. We are actually projected, the 2040 did a comprehensive plan to where we are projected to have 30,000 additional people in our great city, and we have to make room and we have to make way, and we also have to create more opportunities for our businesses to really provide services, provide products, provide produce. And I see this as an opportunity for us to have development without displacement, and that is going to mean that we're going to have someone who needs to be inclusive, who needs to be creative and innovative, and also working with our district community councils to make that plan possible. And I am also someone who historically have been displaced, and I know what it feels like to have policies that remove you, and I do not want to make sure that our current incumbent who has not utilized that tool in a rightful way, and for us to speak up around this injustice as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Question?
It's about density, right?
How can higher density have a positive impact on St. Paul?
We are growing as a city, and I think maximizing our opportunities when they come up is going to be really important. And I do like the, kind of the sense of community that some of these higher density developments do provide. People deserve to live with dignity and respect and to have a roof over their head. And so I'm a proponent of, looking at our zoning laws and changing them and making sure that, we are going to continue to develop, we're going to add density, and that we need to make sure that we're doing that across our city, that we are not concentrating poverty the way we've done, because people deserve to live in every corner of our city. And additionally, I think that's also a catalyst to have more interconnected and better public transit systems. There's always a conversation about, do you build the transportation first or do you build the density in the housing? And I think, housing is where we're really going to be able to make a huge impact for folks.
So I agree with we need more high density and it's good for the city as a whole. But I guess some of my concern is how are we getting that high density? So a good example would be the Ford site. I think this is a perfect example of how it's done incorrectly, where I would say the developer got a huge amount of subsidy that's impacting the city as a whole, and more importantly, we don't even know who are getting the housing units as well. So for example, if we look at St. Paul as the Twin Cities, we can see that in Minneapolis, it's getting more expensive to live in Minneapolis, so they're moving toward in St. Paul. So there's a lot of displacement that's occurring where Minneapolis is where all the businesses and finance are occurring, so they're looking for cheaper places in St. Paul, and now there's transportation there, so it's affordable for them. So we have to be very careful in our policies to make sure that it's the St. Paulites that are getting the benefit and not displaced Minneapolis residents that are coming to St. Paul.
I think high density is extremely important for the city of St. Paul. It's going to increase and diversify our tax revenue, and I think that's really important. And I have the experience navigating, working with the developer, working with our subsidy program so that we can create it in a way that is connected to the way we build our transit system. And also, we create it in a way that seniors and folks who are in high density area have access to good, healthy food. That's really important. But we also need to do more. We need to be able to build wealth by supporting small business and ensure that if you have a single family home and if you want to reconstruct, you should have the option to borrow money from the city and develop a multiplex or a four unit so that you can live on one and rent out your other 3 units. These are things that we can do so that density doesn't have to be a burden on us. Density should be a tool and an opportunity for us to create wealth, to diversify our community. Our diversity is our strength in Ward 1, and I look forward to doing that work with you.
Okay, our next question, we will start with Ms. De La Torre, right? Mr. De La Torre? So what services will you fight for to keep Black and brown families in the Rondo community?
There's one of the neatest things about living in this community, I do live on the other side of Selby, right off of Western, is that I've always been impressed with this community's ability to not just tell their story, but to make sure that we know that what was done here is not okay and that we don't do that again. And so one of the biggest tools, I think, again, I really pride myself in being a candidate that's going to work on the issues that most pertain to our communities and are within our scope in city services. And I think that goes back to those bread and butter issues. I mean, we need to make sure that folks are able to afford to buy their home if they choose to in this area. We find that a lot of these folks have been here for generations and they want to stay here, and that could be through home ownership. But when we're competing with commercial developers and we're seeing, and I hear so many stories about, wanting to buy that home over on the other side of the street, but it got purchased and flipped. I think we can do better than that.
So the question was about services, right?
What services will you fight for to keep Black and brown families in the Rondo neighborhood or community?
I would say, besides community safety, I would say beautifying the community. So there is, I know that the Community Stabilization Project and different other community groups are focusing on taking abandoned lots and making them into gardens. So this creates a relationship with the land and the community. So there is a rich history with the Rondo community as a result of prior to the building of Highway 94. So how can we bring that sort of connection with both neighborhoods? So there's a bridge, Rondo, a bridge that's sort of connecting the community as well. So there is different opportunities of, I would say, creating businesses where everyone has equal ownership. So it's not just a normal owner, but the community has ownership. So that creates a lot more character and creates community wealth that's not just connected to only a single person. Thank you.
I think affordable housing is extremely important, and so and also tenant protection. But we also need a solid education for our young people. My son goes to Rondo Pre-K right across the field here, and it's a great program. But we need to do more, right? We need to continue to work on our $15 minimum wage, making sure that business are able to pay $15 minimum wage, and also to enforce our earn, sick, and save time. This is going to help family put food on the table, and we need to continue to invest in young people so that young people have jobs. And also, I support the mayor's program. We're going to be subsidizing $300 per family at some of our schools so that the kids can sustain their home and sustain their education. If we want to build a future, we got to invest in the young people and the family today. So I look forward to doing that work. I'm not just having campaign talking point. We're doing that work every day in the city of St. Paul, and that's why I'm really excited about the next 4 years for us.
This is a question that's very near and dear to me, especially being a granddaughter of a restaurant owner and a daughter, actually, of a grocery store owner right in the heart of Rondo after the deconstruction of many businesses and homes. So first and foremost, we know that to raise a village and raise a family and to actually put food on the table for those who are African Americans or communities of color usually comes in the form of entrepreneurship, usually comes in the form of businesses and running businesses. So I am advocating for more capital to where we don't need more loans. We don't have to put people in debt to actually be able to survive and afford their lives. I'm also investing in making sure we are increasing a cultural business corridor, a district on Selby Avenue, so we can bring to life many of those businesses and those people who want to give and contribute to their neighborhoods. And I'm also advocating for us to highlight through our resolutions and highlight through our Day of St. Paul the many people who are our community staples in our community, highlighting them and recognizing the work that they've brought to the city.
Okay, this may be our last question. And the question is, Ramsey, trying to make sure who we're going to. Yes, Mr. Abu Naeem will be first here. A Ramsey County anti-racism study concluded that harm was caused to families in Black community. Do you support reparations at the city level to address the disparities in St. Paul?
I'm not familiar with the study, but I think one of the key things to understand, is it working? All right. So one of the key things to understand is how does that reparation goes to families? How does it benefit them? When you say benefit them, it's not just a blank check, but it really creates either empowerment or address trauma or address serious issues. Because otherwise, it'll be same thing as getting a tax refund, which doesn't really do that much. So I think this is where, so I agree with the reparations, but I think we can be used more effectively to create investment in a way that, for example, entrepreneurship, this is an opportunity to create further wealth. So this is where I think, so that's the direction I would work with giving more resources to folks. Thank you.
First of all, I want to thank my African American brothers and sisters for their leadership, their courage and sacrifice, because without their leadership and sacrifice, the Hmong people, we wouldn't be able to vote, we wouldn't even be able to have our civil rights, and so I owe a great deal of gratitude to our brothers, African American brothers and sisters. And you know what? The past has been very painful. I think the first thing government can do is to apologize for the wrong that we have done, and then we gotta heal. We heal as a community. We heal as a country. Russia's and other countries looking at us, they're laughing at us when we're divided. United States, we're better when we're stronger, we're more powerful, we have greater democracy, our influence on democracy when we unite it as one. And so I'm happy to have a conversation with you going forward and what will work for the city of St. Paul and what does reparation mean to us and the hurt that has been done. And I think that we want what's good for St. Paul. And if we, but we also have to recognize the hurt, and then how do we real time provide opportunity for African American brothers and sisters to thrive and to own this country as well.
So this is a project, a journey, and also a policy and practice that I've been informed as a vice president for the Minneapolis NAACP. I'm in support of HR 40, which is a bill that's on a federal level to actually begin the task force on what reparations mean and how it will be rolled out across our nation. I'm in full support of bringing that conversation to City Council and talking with my colleagues around what reparations mean to St. Paul that actually has real history and still has the current day impacts of displacement of racist policies and practices that have been implemented and have not been overturned. Also, I think we need to, recognize that when we talk about these practices and policies, that we need to have a leadership that really knows the impacts of how it's going to be, and to make sure that we are doing harm reduction when we are issuing many bills or on the city level ordinance and resolutions thus far. Thank you.
Wow, that's a really heavy question, but I think a very welcome one. If I'm being completely honest and pragmatic, I don't know. Our city is really struggling with generating revenue, right? So I don't know how we do that as a city. I do think that the way that we do it is by focusing on the issues that are within our jurisdiction as municipal leaders, and that means dismantling systemic oppression within our city systems. How do we make sure that our departments, through our city dollars, are interacting with our communities of color, particularly our Black and African American communities, to eliminate implicit bias? And that's something that we need to acknowledge, and it's there in every single form of government. We've seen it through zoning and how it's still present through single family housing. There's just so many things that our society as a whole has done wrong to Black and African American communities, and so I think that's really how I want to tackle it.
Well, I want to thank the candidates for answering so many frank and candid questions. And at this time, we are going to begin our closing process, which will give each of the candidates a 2-minute opportunity to give any closing remarks. And we will start with Mr. Naeem.
Oh, again?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Thank you. I almost got it all the way through, guys. Mr. Daitao will start.
Thank you for being here tonight. It's an honor serving you. I know that we may have different history, but I believe that we are heading in the same direction and we share the same destiny. And this is not the right time to hit the reset button on all the progress that we have made. The city of St. Paul, Ward 1, it's an international destination. People want to move here, they want to live here, they want to build their lives here. Right now, we need a leader in City Hall that will voice for us, that will drive hard bargain for all of us, who believe that in order for his family to do well, he has to fight for you and your family first because we're interconnected. It makes no sense that we continue to have struggle in our community. It makes no sense that people are still in poverty when we're the richest country in the world. And I can't do that work alone. I need you to stand alongside me. We need to be at the table with each other, uplifting each other. This is the time to unite. This is the time to be an example to the rest of the city and the rest of the country. that in Ward 1, we are one. We stand united. We celebrate our diversity. No matter how difficult the city of St. Paul has come through, our ancestors, our parents and grandparents has gone through much worse time than we have now. This is the time where we come together to solve our trash issue, to solve our tax issue. Ain't nobody gonna save us. We're gonna save ourselves. That's what Americans all about. And that's why I'm seeking re-election, and I'm asking you to support me on November 5th to give me a chance to work with you to continue on the progress that we have made. And I'm excited about this work. I know how to get the work done, and I look forward to working with you the next 4 years. Thank you so much.
Once again, thank you for people who have brought the questions forward. Those are really challenging, tough questions that we need to know and where our city council member stands on. And I am running to bring and carry that spirit of community that was instilled in me from my historic Rondo community, who really were displaced because they didn't have the agency and the influence to really change policies and practices that impacted their everyday life. I'm someone who understands that hurt. I understand that pain. And I also understand that we need to build power and we need to build agency and purpose driven agency on city council. I'm running as an educator. Many of the people that have talked about poverty, I'm someone who have lived it and also had helped get our children out of poverty and give them access and mobility to a bigger opportunity for them to see themselves, as the next city council member, see themselves as the next city employee or the entrepreneur, the business owner. I believe that we cannot wait on the sidelines and make excuses on not having a reset, because we know that if we do not reset, we will crash. And I'm making sure that we aren't going to be a city that's going to crash and burn, but we're going to be a city that's going to rise above our toughest challenges. We're going to be a city that rise above hate. We're going to be a city that rise above racism. We're going to be a city that rise above poverty and rise above our pessimism. And I am here to be a light. I'm also here to be a wise young person who knows some things, and also reaching out for you to support me on November 5th as your first choice vote, to make sure that we're having a new change, a new lens on how our city is going to run, and making sure that we're having a new way of approaching how we're going to have this conversation on the city council. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being here and spending your evening listening to us talk. But it's really such an opportunity to put myself out there and to share what my ideas are and how we're going to collaborate together to make our city a better place to live. And I'm someone that's really deeply rooted in learning systems and figuring out how they work and making those improvements. And it's something that I intend to do as your next city council member. We need to change, no matter what the issue that is that we're changing or that we're talking about. We all talk about how we want to, I think the root problem is we need to change the way our city interacts with us. And I am a firm believer in transparency and accountability. It's how I'm running my campaign. It's how I intend to govern, with people like you and me at the center of the decision making at City Hall. And you should never be left to guess where your elected leaders stand on any issues. And that's exactly where we've been for the last several years. Left to wonder what's going on with minimum wage, what's going on with the soccer stadium. I mean, you name it. And that's not leadership, that's failure. And so it's really up to you who you get to represent you at City Hall. And I can tell you we're not going to agree on everything. I mean, it's just not going to happen. That would be arrogant for me to tell you that. And I'm not going to have all the answers, but I know that I live in a community that is diverse and is more than able and willing to give me and to bring those ideas forward. And so I just, it's not just about driving a hard bargain. It's about making sure that we're compromising, that we're hearing each other, and that we're really looking to make the most pragmatic decisions that benefit the most vulnerable in our community, and to make sure that we're doing good by the most amount of citizens. So thank you so much again for being here.
Hello, everyone. So the reason why I'm running is to give voices to the disenfranchised. So we can look at the data. For example, right now, who are in the room? Who are the ones who actually vote? And one of the things I've learned is when I was door knocking in disenfranchised communities, there's systemic failure of our institutions, of our government supporting them. And in fact, when you talk to the organization, there's gatekeeping that's involved. They are excluded from the process. So my goal is to give the systems, I would say the accountability of our governments to support those communities. If you talk to them, they'll say what they're frustrated about. And there's this, I would say this stereotype associated with poor folks being lazy, but that is completely wrong. They are hungry, they're surviving, and they want something different. And right now, what we're having right now is not doing it. This has been done for 30, 40 years. We're in the same position. So really, it needs to be empowerment of community members. So why are we electing leaders saying, I'm gonna solve this, rather than community members saying, we are gonna solve this? And to do that is to give them power, is to give them responsibility, to give them a space. So right now, all these leadership city positions or whatever, they're putting gatekeeping to actually get people who are in poverty that understand what are the needs of the community. They are the experts, and we gotta find them out. We gotta give them strength. We gotta give them power. And one of the beautiful things of door knocking in these communities, you hear these beautiful stories. So for example, in countries that are abject poverty, they have a big, huge heart. So if there's someone that's stuck in the road, they won't just repair the car. They'll bring the person to their family, give them food, give them a place to stay, and say, no, you don't need any money. Like, it's completely free. So one of the things I ask for community members is not about, it's not about building the heart of St. Paul. It's to understand the heart of St. Paul is everyone. And this is where we take those little things. So right now, we're using civic engagement. We're using technology of 200 years ago, even though we live in the digital age. We gotta remove the barriers to get people involved. Thank you.
So please give another round of applause for all of our candidates for Ward 1 City Council.
I also want to take a moment to thank all of the organizers, in particular the League of Women Voters, for putting this together. And above all else, we encourage you to please vote. Make sure that you get information about all of our candidates that can be found in the back and information about ranked choice voting. Have a safe and wonderful evening, everyone. Thank you.